On the Tuesday Countdown podcast, after 3 days filled with unbelievable verbal mistakes in speeches and elsewhere, it appears that Donald Trump is suffering from a disease called fluent aphasia, Wernicke's aphasia, in which they sound like sentences or answers to questions, but, and this is almost the literal clinical definition,
almost the literal
they are
clinical?
in fact word salad. Wernicke's aphasia, fluent aphasia. He may also be suffering from another disease called anosognosia, in which you cannot realize nor accept the idea that you have an illness or injury.
Describing
All that,
himself.
plus the Supreme Court betraying America yet again, but inadvertently giving Joe Biden a kind of qualified, specific immunity in case he wants to try to overthrow an election. Please join us after the State of the Union live on YouTube with our special Countdown State of the Union postgame show. And also please join us on the Tuesday Countdown podcast, now live wherever you podcast.
I was reluctant to start with this video because I don't think, what's his face? Olbermann deserves any more oxygen than he naturally takes up from the world. I'm just going to double check my audios as we're doing this. I was reluctant to, but I have to because we need to see the sheer psychotic, unhinged individual. We went from a world of don't do your own research, trust the experts, to do your own research, diagnose people without having the slightest clue as to what you're talking about. He's diagnosing Donald Trump with aphasia. I mean, it's almost literally the definition. But by the way, the reason why I brought this up is because I'm going to highlight a few of his other tweets in which he refers to the justices of the Supreme Court as political whores, but after singling out 3 of the female justices who I guess he thought were indebted to him for being liberal and betraying him, highlighted 3 of the female justices in particular before going on to refer to them as political whores. But speaking of aphasia and clinical disorders, so you got the tweet with his diagnosis that he posted 11 hours ago. Then you scroll down. Hold on, we got to go to Keith Olbermann's. What's going on here? Refresh. He must have posted that tweet every hour on the hour for about. There's one. Bringing it down. Oh, who's this? What's this? Al Franken. Forget it. We don't need to go into that more on. But what I did want to highlight with Keith Olbermann, being a raging psychopath, he put out a tweet yesterday. I'll highlight both of the tweets because it's just talking about unhinged lunacy, not realizing you're crazy. I recognize I have certain mental traits that some might be able to diagnose as any variety of OCD, GAD, ADHD, whatever. I recognize it. I recognize that whenever I make any accusation about anybody else. But I think it was from Full Metal Jacket. The dead and the dumb have one thing in common. They don't know it. As for the mentally unhinged like Keith Olbermann, this is a tweet that he put out yesterday as he was crying, but for some reason said it wasn't tears, it was urine on his face. And I have no idea what the hell he's talking about. The Supreme Court has betrayed democracy 9-0. When they pack the court, people, they got to pack it now with more than 9. Its members, including Ketanji Brown Jackson, Keegan, Sotomayor, they are all 3 women, liberal justices on the court, have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. The white man is telling the women how they should be reading and what they should be thinking and how they should be ruling. And collectively, the, quote, court has shown itself to be corrupt and illegitimate. Ironically enough, if you call the government illegitimate, that's insurrectionist talk. But when Olbermann, the unhinged lunatic, singles out 3 justices by name, that's okay. And then, by the way, then he goes into, let's just get clear on the time here. This is March 4th. This is yesterday. This one is 12 p.m. That's right. Okay, good. 2 hours later, Ketanji Jackson Brown, Kagan, I forget her first name, and Sotomayor have proved themselves inept at reading comprehension. And then as I thought about it a little bit more, psychopath Keith Olbermann, if the political whores on the court are overruling quite explicit language in the Constitution to benefit one politician, your separations of power died long ago. Keith Olbermann is mentally unwell. I'm not going to diagnose him with anything in particular. I know what I'm thinking. That man, not only would I not let that man babysit my kids, walk my dogs, I wouldn't let him feed my fish. I wouldn't let him clean up after my dog. He's a psychopath. Okay, We got a good one today, people. So some of you may have seen a tweet thread that went viral, as they say, the kids these days. And it was investigative journalist work from an independent journalist who I've never heard of, but I saw the tweet thread like everyone else and read it with great interest and reached out. And she said, yes, we'll come on and we'll talk about it. And we're going to go through all of it. And we're going to break down and potentially not expose, because I can no longer expose it because it has been exposed seemingly by Mel, although I don't know what her full name is. We're going to put it on the blast of all blasts, because there is nothing more fitting than a corrupt attorney general. She's the attorney general, correct? Yeah, the AG of New York Attorney General, Letitia James, persecuting Trump, and $500 million fine. Make it $1 billion, make it $10 trillion, for allegedly overvaluing his assets and a bank giving him preferential loan rates, allegedly based on that overvaluation. All of it's bullcrap. But for someone who's going to meticulously comb through financial statements, bank loan agreements, contracts between corporation and banks, all of whom are, fully vaccinated adults, as we say in French. Hey, it's maybe time to shine that spotlight very much on Letitia James. So, without further ado. Oh, sorry. For those who don't know how the channel works, we're going to start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to wind up or end. We're going to wind off, move out of CommieTube, go over to Free Speech Rumble platform. The link to Rumble is up in the pinned comment if I've done it properly today, which I have. Then, when the stream is over entirely, we're going to go over to Locals, where we have another Locals chat today with a supporting member, and it's going to be fantastic. So, that is it. Who likes Keith is a darn good question, Rockstar Marie. It's not the first time he's had a psychopathic, unhinged rant of a tirade. And yeah, he's gotten enough. Who's Viva Frei at the dentist? I don't know what that means, Pete. Okay, life lockdown. Okay, so let's do it. Mel, you ready? 3, 2, 1.
Hi.
Mel, how goes the battle?
It's good so far today. Like I said, I'm babysitting a little puppy. This is Allie.
That is guaranteed a Labradoodle.
Yeah. Well, she's a miniature golden doodle. She's really tiny. She's about 9 weeks. She's only 4 pounds.
Well, that's very cute. Look how she's looking at you. Oh.
No, she's a doll baby. She's very timid, and I have a mean cat that just came up and just swatted her because she can.
So you're not a dog lady, but you're a cat lady.
No, I'm a dog person, but I'm not a cat. I'm on a cat, that's on an individual basis. I would never describe myself as a cat person, but I like my cat when she's not being awful.
Well, that's my problem with cats, is they are seemingly always awful. There's one cat down my street, which is a beautiful cat and comes up, and the only reason why he's a beautiful cat is because he acts like a dog.
Yeah,
Bada-boom.
It's funny. My cat, she loves all people, but she hates all other animals on this earth. She tolerates my dog, but if it were up to her, she would just banish them all and never have to see another animal the rest of her life. And so, but she loves people and she's super friendly. But,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Mel, I haven't even given you the 30,000-foot overview because I haven't even had enough time to delve into who you are. If there's been other podcasts where you've explained your situation, who you are, but 30,000-foot overview. What do you tell the public by way of elevator pitch?
So I have a political science degree. My background, I worked for a criminal defense attorney for a few years, so I did paralegal work. That kind of prepped me doing, discovery reviews and stuff like that to really dive deep and look for things that the government doesn't tell you up front. And also to really never trust the official report from the government, because if you've ever dealt with criminal defense, I'm sure you've seen it, very often what the story they tell you is not the story that happened in the crime or for your defense. So that kind of, I think, that experience gave me healthy skepticism of the government and of official narratives in general. And so, like I said, I'm really into politics. Last year, I started looking into Tim Scott when he announced for his presidency. And because I knew what it was, I knew he was just going to launder the money that he had just raised, all the money that he had just raised from his Senate race, what was left over. There was like $15-16 million left over. And what I came across was that I knew kind of what was going on, but I was really shocked when I found out Tim Scott raised $52 million for his reelection in 2022. His Democrat opponent raised $200,000. Tim Scott spent $38 million on reelection.
Are you aware of any caps on the amount that they can raise total? Because I ran for the People's Party of Canada. If I'm not mistaken, I could only raise 20 some odd thousand. Like there was a cap that you could raise.
Right. And I always say, that is the solution. We have to put caps on it. No, in America, there is no cap on how much you can raise. We have candidates running for state houses. There was a kind of famous case in 2021. New Jersey state's legislator, he raised $18 million for a state house seat. It's crazy, right?
It's wild. Tim Scott this was for his senatorial race in, was it for his
South Carolina? Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally safe state. He was always going to win. It was never even a competition. And like I said,
$50 million.
He raised $52 million. He spent 38. Yeah.
Okay. So the rules are, what can be done with the excess or what cannot be done with the excess of what's left over? But then more importantly, how do you spend $38 million without it just being a slush fund for contractors, advertisers, and everyone coming and get a contract and we'll divvy out this money?
Right. Well, it actually just turns into a slush fund for consultants, millions and millions and millions of dollars into these consultancy fees. But then it gets turned into a personal slush fund, flying around and thinking, I have it if you search my Twitter feed, you'll find it. You search Tim Scott. I went through the expenditures one by one and I broke it down into just a really easy to digest spreadsheet. But he had like $200,000 in airfare, another $200,000 in hotels and in meals, and there's black car rentals. There's just everything you can think of, to live a really, really good lifestyle.
There's certain things that I'm going to be that I'm always tend to be forgiving about, like when not Alex Jones, James O'Keefe was getting in trouble with the accusations that he was using Project Veritas as a slush fund. He was taking black cards. I'm like, I don't expect politicians, especially detested politicians, to be hailing down cabs on the street. So some things I'll give him a pass for, because I would give the same benefit of the doubt to someone who I liked versus someone who I hated.
Right.
But
yeah.
At what point does it no longer? At what point does it cease being campaign issues anymore, especially after you comfortably win? And then right. What happens to it after the campaign is over, or what is supposed to happen to it after the campaign is over?
Right. Like I'm not an unreasonable person. I don't expect these people to live on bread and water. I'm very reasonable. I'm okay. Again, $5, $6, $7 million on a reelection, you can still live a pretty decent life. You can still eat at very nice restaurants, and that's for Senate, obviously, because it's every 6 years. But it clearly crosses a line. You're taking money. Also, and the other thing is, we had Blake Masters out in Arizona who struggled mightily to get any money. And that was, a potentially competitive race. He raised $10 million and he was fighting a $150 million war chest of Mark Kelly. And here we've got Tim Scott blowing $38 million, raising $52 million, blowing $38 million on a seat that was 100% guaranteed was never going to flip. That was the thing that first really kind of ticked me off, because I always liked Blake Masters. But so that was the first time I really realized that, okay, these people can use this money in ways that I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that they could. I knew that, campaign events, catering events and stuff like that. But when you really get in there and you start digging and scratching at this stuff, you realize that this is not, when you're running up $5,000 bills at the Capitol Hill Club, you are not, that's not a campaign expense. That's
for those who don't know, like myself, what's the Capitol Hill Club?
It's a really fancy members only club in DC that they all Republicans love. I think it's some kind of fine dining steakhouse. They've got like the $10,000 bottles of wine and stuff like that. It's a members only club. Apparently, I just found out yesterday looking through somebody's expense. Oh. It's got $50,000. It's a $50,000 membership fee. to even belong to this club.
It's not like the old joke, I'd never want to become a member of a club that would have me as a member, but like I would never, everything about that sounds uncomfortable, and nothing about it is alluring, but this is where the disgusting backdoor deals of politics occur in an exclusive, and they just go, they tip them, just easy to dispose of the money when stuff is overpriced or exceedingly high priced.
Right. Yeah. It's always funny because, they'll be spending, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 at Mastiano's in DC. And then you'll look and you'll see their expenditures back in their own districts or their own states. And, they're buying Chick-fil-A for their supporters, which just kind of cracks me up. Somebody down in Texas, I looked at one time, he had spent $7,000 at Mastiano's, which is some fancy restaurant in DC. And then the very next day spent $300 at Buc-ee's for a campaign event, just so typical. But so that was the first time I really realized that, okay, these people are really living a lifestyle and they're using these campaign funds to supplement their lifestyles, which actually makes a lot more sense why they want to keep these jobs so bad, because they get to live like kings, right? And so I've done a bunch of threads. I did one on Dan Crenshaw. I did one on Steve Scalise. I usually focus on Republicans because I'm a Republican and, I'm a firm believer in you have to fix your own house first. But I was doing a podcast with a guy named James Clary out of Southeast Missouri. And he asked me, he said, hey, can you look into Letitia James, see if she's got anything? And I really wasn't expecting anything, honestly. I'd never really looked into a state rep before. I mean, I casually kind of looked into it, but I never really downloaded their stuff and really combed through the expenditures. And I was shocked when I found, hers, because again, she's a Democrat attorney general in a really safe state, New York. The only real race that she had was her 2018 primary, which she pretty much easily won. And ever since then, as long as she's running, she's going to be fine. Like she's just going to glide through. She doesn't need all of this money. And yet what we find is that she's raising, for her second campaign, something like $8 or $9 million.
Before we even get there, actually, you said you were working as a paralegal for the, how are you doing this independently as a living? No, I don't. So I own a small business. But then I just kind of, once I've become obsessed with things I think everybody knows our country, and I know you live in Canada and it's the same up there, that something's wrong. We all know something's wrong. These people aren't responsive to us. They don't represent us anymore. They are, who knows who they represent, but we know it's not us, right? So I kind of just started writing these threads on Twitter and posting them, and some of them would gain traction. My one on Tim Scott, I think it got like 800,000 views. I wrote one on ghost donors a couple weeks ago. That got almost 1 million, but nothing quite like the Letitia James thing. Well, it's very, very, very timely. And by the way, I should say, Canada is so broken, I actually had to flee, at least temporarily, to the free state of Florida. That's where I reside now.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I may ask, what's the small business?
I own a screen printing business, so okay. I sell stuff online. Before COVID, it was really, really good, and it's still good. It's kind of one of those things like I design shirts, I sell them for moms going to Disney. So, but they're not trademarked or anything. They're just Disney themed. It's kind of hard to explain. I never really mixed it because obviously my politics, I never.
So you haven't gotten any of the AOC contracts or the Letitia James contracts for shirts for a campaign. No. A million shirts at $15 a shirt.
Right? No. I mean, it does good for me, and it's something fun, and it allows me to work from home, which is really
well. And this was never the objective, but what's the name of it and what's the website while we're on the subject?
I don't want to share
okay. All right. Sorry. Never mind. I've done it. I put my foot in my mouth. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's just it's like Disney themed, like when I say Disney themed, but
it's good. Some people don't want to mix politics whatsoever, or what they do is a pastime.
Yeah, and it's so apolitical,
Well, I'll just plug mine then. Go to vivafrei.com for some shirts.
Yeah.
All right. Now, I want to talk. We're going to get into all of this, but we're going to leave YouTube in about 5 minutes. The question, and everybody on YouTube, get your butts on over to Rumble because we're 4,500 on YouTube. What are we on Rumble? 4,700. So make the migration because we are doing it. But the question is this: methodology. Ghost donors, because we're going to get into it with Letitia James, but break down that thread or explain to us, because it's a foreign concept to me that out-of-state individuals could even donate to a local attorney general race. Explain what the ghost donors is while I plug the links to the other places where we're going to go, and then we're going to go over and talk Tish James.
Okay, so it's like, where do you start, right? I know why people don't write about this because it is kind of, where do you even start? So in 2023, James O'Keefe, most people know him from Project Veritas, he kind of exposed a scam on Act Blue, which basically what he noticed, and I had noticed this before too, but O'Keefe, of course, took it to the next level, which is what you really have to do. He noticed that there were people, older people especially, listed on Act Blue as having given tens of thousands of donations, sometimes totaling $100,000, but they're always small dollar donations. So we're talking about some old grandma in Topeka making 10,000 donations, but they're like $1 each, right? Which is still a lot of money. And it was just really odd. So what O'Keefe did was he actually printed out the names of these people, and he went around and started asking people, did you donate to, Act Blue 1,500 times? Did you donate, 3,500 times? And without fail, every person he went to was like, no, these donations were not mine. I didn't make these, they had all maybe given a handful of times, but none of them even had the money to be able to do something like this.
Is the donation coming via a name or a name and address, or a name and address and a credit card? Like at some point it has to be traceable.
So it comes through the conduit, which is Act Blue, and it's using a name and an address. Yes. Okay.
And so these people who were they in fact making the donations, or were the donations being made and just using their names and addresses?
So the donations were being made in their names, which is illegal. And no, they were not making them. They had no idea that any of this was happening. These people are real, though. They do exist. They're not dead or anything like that. They always exist, and they're always alive. That is one thing. And I have looked at thousands of their names. I've looked up, how much their homes are valued at. When I see somebody that's given, $139,000, and then I see that, this is a woman that's living in what is probably a rent-controlled older apartment for someone, or, she's a retired teacher. She's 76 years old. And I'm supposed to believe that she's been giving 15 donations every single day for the last 3 years to different candidates, totaling $79,000. So that O'Keefe exposed that in early spring of 2023, and it kind of just landed with a thud. Nobody talked about it. That's something that you would think Republicans would have jumped all over.
It's something that I think I would have jumped all over if it's like some of the things don't even cross the radar, but I'll actually have to text James and see if he's going to come on and talk about it, because this is how you launder money. I mean, I don't know if you call it dark money, but this is how you launder money into campaigns. And okay, but I'll have more questions on the traceability. So the monies are in fact coming from them, or not necessarily coming from them?
No, it's never coming.
Definitely not. Okay. Yeah. And so somebody's making the donation in their name, using their address, their name, unbeknownst to the person. And it's an amazing thing. You talk about you can go easily find out based on someone's address. Do they own? Do they rent? How much is it worth? And does it correlate with the amount of a donation? Like all of this is, for paralegal, you know how to do this. It's all at the fingertips on the internet.
Yep.
Okay, interesting. So the Act Blue piece comes out, and this piques your interest.
Right. And so I'm very interested in this, but it kind of lands with a thud, right? Like it's Marco Rubio sent a letter to the FEC, but that's it. Like nobody, again, this should have been the biggest scandal ever, right? And Republicans are just silent on it. And so I got put in Twitter jail last July. And that was when I first did, my deep dive on Tim Scott. And what I realized when I downloaded all of his expenditures was, Tim Scott had like 15,000 refunds, and he was refunding donations that were like 30 cents, 15 cents, $1. At that point, I didn't even know you could get your political donation back, but you have to ask for it. But then I was like, who asks for 30 cents back? This is not right. Something is not right here. And so I start digging, and, lo and behold, WinRed's doing the exact same thing. And then it all made sense why nobody has actually jumped all over this, because of course they're not. They're doing the same exact thing. This is a mutually assured destruction. So that's why nobody wants to bring it up. That thread that I wrote has got almost 4 million views. Elon Musk commented on it. I know they've all seen it, and not a single candidate, not a single politician has said one single word on it. None of them.
It's wild, actually. You say the reference mutually assured destruction. In this case, it's mutually assured profitability or mutually assured benefits, is that both parties get to do it. And so why would anyone want to call it out? Right. And so what was the outcome of James O'Keefe's expose, that these monies are being put through by other people in the names of people, and no traceability as to who the actual donors are, and no follow-up and no further discovery?
So there's another gentleman named Peter Bernegger, and if you guys are interested, you can go to his website. These people are tremendous. I mean, they're just incredible what they've done. Mr. Bernegger, and then he has a whole team of people. They have created a website called electionwatch.info. And if you go there, there's an interactive map that they have documented tediously every ghost donor in every state. You can scroll over, and they've got them listed how many donations these people have supposedly made, what's the total of them. And they did that by tapping an API into the FEC website. I mean, it's really incredible. They have documented it perfectly. Mr. Bernegger said that he had filed over 40 complaints with the FEC and has barely gotten anywhere with it. They're totally uninterested.
His name, I put his Twitter handle in there. It's Peter Bernegger, Bernegger. Okay, that's okay. And sorry, and I cut you off there. And so what was the ultimate? No. There's no final answer as to where this money is coming from.
No. It'd have to be audited from. Somebody has to audit the conduit. So Act Blue and WinRed to trace it where it's coming from. My guess is it's probably a lot of different sources. There's probably foreign governments involved here. I've tracked all of the fundraising of the House Republicans from 2022. Not all of them are doing it. Not all of them receive this. I know exactly which ones are, which ones aren't. But it's interesting to see who does and who doesn't do it. But none of them talk about it.
So these are what we call PACs, political action committees. Act Blue is a political action committee for Dems, and what was We Win is the one for
WinRed.
WinRed. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. That would explain why I was coming.
But they're also credit card processing conduits. So it's whenever you go to anybody's website, there are a couple others that they might use. I think the Republicans use Anodot. And then Democrats, they have an alternate too. But for the most part, almost all political donations get ran through Act Blue and WinRed. And so, but because they are also PACs, what happens is they have to report every single penny that they receive every time someone donates. So when you go to look through their stuff, they'll have hundreds of millions of receipts, right? Sometimes billions. When that money is then transferred into a candidate's committee, the candidate, when they go to report their contributions, they only have to report when somebody gives over $200. So if you had, a little old grandma contributing 199 times at $1 each, none of her contributions would even show up in a candidate's report. So it's very easy to hide. But once they hit over that $200 mark, then boom, all of those.
200 200 total.
Right. Yeah.
This is fascinating. I mean, this is not something I didn't even know to not know about it. It's wild. Hold on, I had another question. Someone had just asked in the chat, and it's a good question. Can anyone find out if they have been used as a conduit by searching their name?
Yeah. So first thing to know is if you're super active on social media, if you're young, you probably haven't been, but you go to fec.gov, put in your name at the top or whoever's name you want to use, and a little thing will come up and it'll say search for individual contributions. Click on that, and then be sure to put in your zip code. And because, if you have a common name or whatnot, it'll be, so I had somebody like freaking out saying that, somebody used their grandma's, and then turned out that it wasn't their grandma, it was somebody else. They didn't realize that they could filter like that. But yeah, just put in your zip code. Or, something that I did that I found was I went to WinRed. And like I said, because every single receipt with WinRed is recorded, you can search their receipts by your zip code. So you can put in your zip code, and this is ActBlue too, either one, doesn't matter. Pull up the year, put in your zip code, and then filter. And what I like to do is I put a second filter on there for $0 to $5, because that's really the kind of where you'll see zip code, that, and then you'll be able to see really quickly the people who are probably being used around you. You don't have to put that filter on, the second filter, but yeah, so what I found the first time I was really looking is my neighbor right up the street, 96 years old.
This is so amazing that people don't understand at the tip of their fingers all of this information is available.
Yep. It's just, the thing is that it is complicated and it's confusing. And it's not that, I shouldn't say it's not confusing. It's just complex. It takes a long time to kind of break this down. I know why people don't write about this very often, because it's hard to figure out how to relay this so that people can digest it. And so what I found is that people really like to hear about how the money is being spent, because it's so outlandish. It's so wild.
Here, I'm going to give everybody the link to winred.com where you can go check it out for yourselves.
No, fec.gov.
Oh,
WinRed.
WinRed, you cannot put your postal code in or name to see.
No, no.
Sorry, my bad.
Yep, it's through fec.gov.
fec.gov.
And then type in WinRed in the little search thing. It'll come up, and
I see. Okay, so hold on. So you go to fec.gov, and then you go into the search bar and put in WinRed. Okay. And now you can search. Okay, so here, I'll give everybody this link. And by the way, just to let everyone know, we're going over to Rumble, but the number keeps going up on YouTube. So get off of YouTube, come over to Rumble, because we're going to get into the Letitia James there. This is the link. We're at 5,136 on YouTube. That number should be at 0 in 30 seconds. And if you're stubborn and you're not coming for whatever the reason, shame on you. I'm joking. That's a joke. Come on over to Locals if you want. Or wait until we post the entire interview later. It won't be live and you won't be able to interact. So come on over to Rumble. That's the link. Okay, amazing. All righty. That's a segue. We're going to end on YouTube. This changes nothing on our end. Mel, and is it Mel for Melissa?
Melissa. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to end on YouTube. I'm going to see the number go down one more time. 5172. Come to Viva Frei on Rumble or vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And we're getting into the Tish. We're going from the Fanny, and we're going back to the Fanny tomorrow. Oh, Mel, tomorrow is going to be one hell of a day. From Fanny to Tish and the woman who's persecuting Trump. Okay, we're ending on YouTube. Viva Frei on Rumble.